I've made the decision that I'm going to use a little bit of purple in the background, and that'll actually alter as well down the line. As I work on the piece, I realized that purple wasn't the way to go, especially with the colors that the Batman Wolverine character has. He wasn't popping in, so I ended up altering the background colors on that side of the cover so that his character would pop. But as I'm going through, I'm obviously establishing light sources, right? So Ghost Rider's got fire behind them, and I'm going to use that as a reflective light source, and that's why you see a lot of gold and yellow on the reflective light side of each character. What's reflective light, right? When you have an object, any object in an environment, it's going to receive light from one side. As it moves away from the light, you'll start to see shadows, and then at one point it's going to reach the point where there's no light there, and it creates this core shadow. Okay, but also that same object is going to be in an environment where that light's going to go past the object, bounce off of whatever object is nearest to it, and then reflect back and create what's a reflective shadow or a reflective highlight. Okay, and whatever that is on the other side of it will change that color, so that if it's a red background, that light's going to bounce off of that red and shine it red on that object. And so that's why you see me use a lot of that kind of stuff, right? So since Ghost Rider has this fire with him, that secondary light source is actually what's creating the reflective shadow on these characters in the foreground. I'm using a natural light from up front, and that means that it's basically like a white light, and so that the blue elements have a blue highlight on them, the red elements have a red highlight on them, right? And then the reflective lighting is what's going to help me pop one from the other. So the gold light is going to cue into the fact that the Ghost Rider fire is on our character's left side, and that the Storm character, who's creating lightning, is going to bring this kind of cyan light blue light source on the opposite side. And so by using those golds and cyan lights as reflective, I'm going to be able to pop elements that are similarly colored, or that have similar colors, so that when you have Green Lantern next to Green Arrow, those reflective lights are going to be what's going to help you, pop one from the other the most. You want to take into consideration is what everything is made of, right? So Ghost Rider's fire on cloth will reflect or light differently than on metal, and so that you want to make sure that when you're working with metal, the color is going to be more saturated as it reflects on the metal. You tend to see highlights go to white on metal faster than they do on, say, cloth or even skin, and so that's certain things that you want to take into account. Metal will also absorb a little bit of the color that it's around, and so you'll see me here as I'm kind of bathing the armor with that lightning color, that light cyan, that cyan color is more prominent in the metal than it was really on the other characters' non-metallic parts. All right, and you'll see that the light that it's reflecting mimics what it's reflecting more, and so that the highlights that I'm putting on the Green Lantern Iron Man character look more like the warm highlights look like fire, and the blue ones look like lightning. And so again, know how to render this stuff by observing things around you. As I'm walking down the street, I'm seeing how different things reflect on cars, because I know that metal behaves differently than on the tires, than on the cement, than on the walls. And so I see how they not only capture light or reflect light, okay, but also how they cast shadows and how those shadows behave, because that'll help you establish spatial relationships between the objects too. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, right? There's a bit of a shadow from Thor Orion's shoulder pad onto his shoulder, and it bends because not only is the shoulder rounded, but so is the shoulder pad. And so so those little things that I've now learned from watching, I'm establishing and using them here. You'll see that I'm now bringing back quick mask again. This time, instead of crisp lines, I'm painting it with a soft airbrush. And that's because I want to create a glow. And that glow is something that I can definitely paint in the quick mask stage and edit it so that the parts that I don't want to be affected by the glow, I can erase. And so that's why you see there's no glow overlapping his cape or his right thigh, which are clearly in front of the hammer as he's twirling it. Same with Ghost Rider. I'm painting now the flames. What's cool about it is that I can give it a text like a flame like texture. And now you see me selecting the elements that are in front of it so that I can again erase that glow from there, so that when I fill it with the color, it doesn't affect those specific characters' inks because they're in front, right? And again, that's how you establish those spatial relationships, right? If some of the glow from this character isn't affecting the other character, you know that that character is between you and that flaming character, right? Because it blocks it out, much like, you know, the moon and the eclipse and all that stuff. It blocks it because it's in between the two of them, even though it's smaller, maybe, even though it's not as it doesn't glow, it still opaques it because it stands between you and that element. We're on the thing here, and as we move on to them, this is where I bring a lot of texture brushes, and so a lot of spackle brushes, a lot of dust brushes that I've created, and again, that's a lot of things that we'll start to cover. I'm gonna do videos about how to create your own brushes in Photoshop, and how to borrow from them, and how to alter them so that they do what you want to do, so that you can use them for what you normally use them, right? And so that I can take a cloud brush and alter it in different ways so that it now looks like concrete, or that it looks like energy crackle or a nebula in space, and little things like that, that if you know how to do, you know, one brush can do 6 different things for you. And that's something we'll do a video on just brushes and how to create them, how to alter them, how to personalize them or make them so that they do exactly what you want them to do. All right, and so again, I just moved my way through the piece. I'm still working on just the characters. You'll see that on Storm, I'm using more blue on her because she's a light source, right? So since she's really a power source and a light source, then that blue that I'm using as reflective light on everyone else is an actual light source on her, and so that blue's gonna hit her and stay there. And again, establishing who's where by lighting her this way will help move the different characters forward and backwards visually for you, so that when you see it, you're so used to seeing things visually and establishing what's in front, what's in back by how it's lit and how it opaques, like we just talked about. So this is the same concept, in that since she's the light source, everything on her is going to be hit with that blue light and establish her as the light source for that center panel. Okay, and so now I've made a decision to add a red light or a red background element, which will help me create a third reflective light source. Where I had the cyan and the gold, the red will help me pull certain elements again to the left side of the composition, right? So with this being 2 separate pieces that are also going to be a single piece, I need to make sure that I have multiple light sources that I can do stuff with, and so that's why you saw me start to add that red Kirby crackle as we progress through the piece. I'm again doing the same trick that I used for the Ghost Rider Fire now on Storm's lightning, and painting those masks. I'm now selecting the line art, and this is probably the most tedious part, is that I'm selecting it, but I have to be very specific about and precise when I select it, because I'm going to do a color hold, which means that I'm going to take black ink and change it into a specific color to pop it backwards or to move it back in space, so that it's not as prominent as the inks on the characters, right? So this piece is so busy that I want to take some elements and push them back a little bit, and that's what you see me doing, is I'm selecting the Kirby crackle and eventually changing it to a color. Crackle around Thor to a cyan. Why cyan? Again, it's about making this work as a double piece and as a single piece, and so I'm moving the energy and the palette to help me establish that. All right, I'm just coming through and doing the last few things. On the background, I'm making sure that that background purple isn't too saturated, so that it looks more gray, and so that the purples in the characters in the foreground pop more, have that more saturation, and then a little bit of curvy crackle in between Darkseid and the foreground characters to pop him backwards and drop him in the space. I'm pulling out, and then I'm actually gonna black out one side to see how the right side looks, that it works on its own, and then moving it to the right side to do the same, to make sure that it works on its own, and then the whole piece.